Well, well, well. I
Hold
shouldn't be
up.
the
Yeah, I think that
I shouldn't be the first one
I
to
think
welcome them.
yeah,
This is
it's
we're in
done.
your house tonight. You should you should be welcoming us into your house.
Yes. Making sure that we're not getting echo here. Uh, Brady, have you shared your sound so that when you have to play videos?
No, not yet, because I've
Okay.
yeah, I will when we get to that point.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. All
So
right. So this is a first. Um, close. So we we out here.
what's
All
up,
right.
folks?
So Jay, let's see. We'll wait until the Saints and the Aints make it into the chat. Maybe a few of them.
Yeah,
Uh,
turn this
I
down.
should have said that in inverse order. We'll wait for the Aints and the Saints.
Do good to all those,
The Aints
especially
always.
especially to those who are not in the household of faith.
Yeah, yeah. We got to make the last will be first. The Aints and the Saints. Come on here. Oh man, it's good. It's good to be in the number.
Hmm.
Huh? Make sure your feet are shod with counter apologetic gospel energy. Huh? We
Ah,
need that energy over here.
for sure, for sure. What's up, Ica
We had a
Squad?
hater. We
Did
had a
we?
hater make his way. Yeah, the J-Wit Presents had a hater come by because he heard a little organ music at the beat. He said, "Oh, the organs," in plural. He said, "Oh no, the organs." I said, "No, no, don't get your pants in a bunch. You know, it's only short. It's not. It's nowhere near the merry-go-round you were hearing on Ichabod some months ago." We keep it nice and
So
discreet
wait,
here, nice and
do you do
tasteful.
the organ? You do the organs on your channel?
Well, let's get this straight. I don't know why you guys have a penchant for using plural, making it plural.
You
It's
you
Oregon,
you
not Oregon.
you use the organ on your channel? Because I don't think I've
Yeah,
watched quite a few of your episodes. I don't think I ever remember hearing it unless I just blocked it out.
there is some Oregon in my intro, just a
Okay.
little bit. It's a very short segment, but nothing like we had going before, where it was like, all right, come on, do your little dance and that kind of make a little love, get down tonight type stuff, None of that. By
Yeah.
the way, for those who are going to say too much banter before we got into the show,
Hmm.
we're just waiting for some of the folks the ushers to let them in over here
Hmm.
at J-Wit Protection Presents. So that's what the banter is for. It has
Yeah,
a
we got people
purpose
being
today.
redirected
Uh,
from the church building across the street. You know, you got a church on every corner. So you got you got Ichabod on one corner of the street, and you got Jay Witt's
that's
church on the other
right.
side of the street. So
That's right. That's right. And the crazy thing is, we have been, man, zeal has overtaken me for thy house, huh? Is both Brady and I are. I mean, he's a man after my own heart in the sense that we've been watching videos. We want to respond to certain things, so we just had to come back together and
Mhm.
dwell together in unity over this. We got to sit. We got to stand over these videos in unity, debunking them. So there may be a little of that going on, at least for this season, and
Well,
this is an appropriate season.
I was about to say, speaking of the season, what did you all do yesterday? How many of you all celebrated something like the Christmas holiday? Was it completely pagan? Did you do nothing? Did you do something that centered around spirituality? Even if for you, spirituality is just family? What did you do yesterday? I was going to do nothing. My sister, my mother, my sister's boyfriend, my nephew, they all came over, bought tons of food. I've been loving the holidays this year. I mean, I left with, well, not left, I live here. When they left, I had tons of food left over. Jewish apple cake and oh my God, I'm living like a king right now. But what'd you guys do yesterday?
Hmm. Yeah, drop it in the comments in the chat. I didn't remark that they should like, subscribe, share. I don't
Yes.
even know. I don't know what that does percentage wise. I'm assuming a very small. You wonder if it's the verbal equivalent to hashtagging things, hoping that it'll become visible. I wonder how many people actually, when you say like, subscribe, share, that actually becomes the impetus for them to do that. I wonder
Well,
how
I know when
frequent.
I'm watching videos and when they say, as always, like, subscribe, I don't I
Mhm.
typically don't do anything different than what I was already doing. I'm sitting there watching and
Yeah.
um, so I don't know. I don't know if that moves or motivates people. My last video got over 3,000 views so far and about
Hmm.
160 likes. So I'm sure a lot of those people who are watching it are believers coming to see what Jared was talking about. But hey, can I read one comment
Oh, sure, sure. Go ahead.
from the last exit strategy? I know this is your channel, but there was a comment on the last video for exit strategy that I posted on Facebook today that I just thought was
Hmm.
really worth reading on the show. So
Hmm.
this is from, if you were on my Facebook, you saw this today. He might have deleted it because he didn't want it up there too long.
Hmm.
Let me see if it's still there. Well, actually, I have the screenshot, so even if it's not there, I still have it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I'll go to the screenshot. This was from Grim
Is it
Reaper.
is hmm
What you gonna say?
No, no, I'm listening. I'm listening.
Yeah, so on the JR video, Grim Reaper 7544 said, Brady, I need to send you a renunciation email. And as soon as I read that, I'm like, renunciation email? Are you renouncing? Are you renouncing Ichabod? Like, what's going on? He says, we went back and forth on Facebook 2 years ago. You
Mm,
blocked me. So I blocked this guy 2 years ago. I didn't know who this was. He says, I argued for the gospel for years and have come to a conclusion after 2 years of digging through your book, talking about my book, Let There Be Gaslight, and my own research. I would like to email you the email that I have typed up, renouncing my faith before I go public. I would love your
mm,
feedback back. Please let me know if it's possible. And it wasn't until he told me
hmm
what his name was and I unblocked him on Facebook and saw his Facebook profile picture. I was like, yo, I remember going back and forth with him on Facebook. I typically only block people for two reasons. One, they're disrespectful and I ask them to chill and they don't. Two, if it seems like we're just going back and forth and we're not getting anywhere and you keep coming back to my page, sort of like my page is triggering for you so that you have to respond, but the conversation never advances. At some point, it's almost like a mercy kill. I'm like, this ain't healthy for either one of us. It's stressful for me. It's vexing you. I'm just going to block you so that you don't have to see my post anymore because the conversation's not growing. There's some believers
hmm
I talk with over and over again, and you know, it's not vexing for either of us. But this guy, I ended up just having to block him. 2 years later,
Yeah,
he comes back.
turn them over to God instead of turning them over to Satan. It's the
Yeah.
opposite. You had to excommunicate
But
them.
no, you know what? Here's what I said on Facebook today. Anytime I block somebody for this reason, because he was not disrespectful, it just was too much back and forth and not going anywhere. Every time I block somebody on that type time, I'm always thinking in my mind, like best case scenario, like, yo, imagine if this person ends up like, the light comes on and they realize,
Pod
oh,
answered prayer.
yeah, you know what I mean?
Pod
Like
answered prayer, huh?
I
Yeah.
always, I always hope, but I never expect it to happen. So to get that message from him, like, yo, it was crazy. Like it really made it feel like, yo, you're
You're making a difference.
you're making a difference. You're reaching people. And I said this on Facebook. I'm never sitting here on some, I told you so. No, I remain on welcome to humanity. You realize you're in the same boat as everybody else in the world. You're no longer pretending to have answers that none of us really have. and you're joining humanity in searching for those answers and rejoicing when we feel like we're getting closer to an answer. But you're not on that pretending
Hmm.
you have answers anymore. You're not on that dogmatic, authoritarian type time anymore. So welcome to humanity, yo. And he sent me the letter, the email that he typed up to his church because it's really not. He's not trying to put this out to the world. It's to his church family. But bro, if you saw this letter, it's worth publishing. Like he leaves no stone unturned in terms of explaining why he doesn't believe the God of the Bible, Jesus, the Bible, or God for that matter anymore. And like,
Hmm.
so I hope he gets to the point where he's willing to go public and maybe even do a Life After Faith episode. So who knows?
Yeah. Um, let's see. Are they? We've been here for about a little over 10 minutes. I think
Hmm.
those who are,
Yep.
the chosen frozen are here, and
Hmm.
let's get busy.
All right.
So I hit up. I guess we'll call him apostle. Well, I'm the apostle, so he's Bishop Brady. Hit him up. I don't know, it was a week ago or something, somewhere around the time that this pod that we're going to be reviewing dropped. Um, it's a podcast called The Sanctuary, which features Dr. Eric Mason and a pastor, one of his co-pastors at his church, one of the elders there, Vernon. I don't know what Vernon's last name is. I can't remember what it is. I think it's
It's
Mobley or
Mosley.
something
Yeah,
like that.
Mobley. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Mobley.
So he's so it features the two of those guys. Slick production. You know, we don't come to you with eloquence, with man's wisdom. We don't come to you with slick sets, but we do come bearing the truth.
Mm,
That is Ichapod and the squad, right?
hmm.
But what we can say, and that is not to say that coming with the slick sets and eloquence, etc. Um, isn't a thing. That is a thing. I mean, hopefully we're believing pod that Ichabod will eventually have the accoutrements to match the kind of level of critical thought going into the publication of his videos. That is Bishop Brady, and
Hmm.
hopefully the same will be true for Apostle J-Wit. But that being said, I feel like give the due where it belongs. Give the flowers where they can be smelled. So
Oh, I'm
their
sorry.
podcast is.
I'm sorry. Can I say one
Mhm,
more thing real quick since you said that? If you're not a Patreon supporter to Ichabod,
mhm,
this coming Sunday, the 29th, I am doing something special with the Ichabod Patreon supporters where we're going to actually do a movie review where we're going to actually all as many people as can actually get on a Zoom meeting. We're going to be talking about the movie Heretic. So if you haven't seen it, I haven't
mm,
watched it yet. I'm going to watch it tomorrow. And then on the 29th, if you're an Ichabod Patreon supporter, you'll get a link to join the Zoom. We're going to actually record the session. So it'll be one of the episodes that we post next year. Me and the Patreon supporters discussing the movie Heretic. So if you're not a
I saw that
Patreon
in the
supporter,
theater.
okay. If you're not a Patreon supporter, I'll drop the link to become one. If you are, the 29th, this coming Sunday, we're going to be discussing Heretic. So,
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that was a good place to plug
hmm.
support. All of those. I'm imagining the overlap, the Venn diagramish overlap between J-Wit Presents and Ichabod is probably pretty strong.
Hmm.
But if there happens to be anyone who's supporting J-Wit Presents who has not found their way to Ichabod's channel, go over there and support that man. He's over there doing Pod's work over there. So what was it? I was in the middle of offering up flowers to Dr. Eric Mason and his co-host Vernon Mobley, and that saying that their set is polished, uh, is clean. You're seeing it in, was it 4K at least?
Hmm.
Um, it's they look comfortable, very cozy set. And they're talking about, I guess another thing I could say is they're talking about, at least in this last I mean, it got the fire under me. They're talking about the things that matter.
Hmm.
They're talking about angelology and demonology, right?
Hmm.
So they're pushing on those hot button topics, and in their minds correcting what they see as uh, thought that okay, you need to share. Okay, um, uh, I lost my train of thought, but they're touching on things that are errant in the, I guess you could say, in the black church, so to speak.
Hmm.
So yeah, and so with that in mind, their last video, which featured Eric, Dr. Mason, going essentially ham on people's demonology and their doctrine of Satan, or Satan, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And we have to make note of maybe the most important element in when reviewing this video is that they obviously hold to a univocal view of the text. So that he with great ease
Hmm.
glides from Revelation to Ezekiel to Isaiah, making no concessions, making no kind of preemptive statements, or I shouldn't say preemptive statements, making no not no preface before he goes and makes those transitions. He just assumes there's a singular voice in all of these different texts and skates around and adds in a little of Dr. Mace's special sauce on top of the text. That is, wherever the text doesn't seem to cohere, what he will do is he will add in that gravy. You know, any of you who are familiar with going to the Jamaican restaurant or the soul food restaurant, sometimes they will tell you, do you want some gravy? The gravy makes it all come together. and what Dr. Mason has, that special sauce that he puts in there when the one text doesn't cohere with the other one quite well. What he will do is he'll find himself adding in a little of Dr. Mace's special gravy to help with that univocal view of the text, right? I'll turn it over to you, Brady. I've said a lot, but those are my flowers, and I guess it's starting to sound like it's turning into a criticism. So I better put the mic down.
No, I don't have anything by way of intro. I'd rather just get into it. You better just
Yeah, let's dive in. Let's dive in.
Okay. I'm going to share and let's see how this goes. All right. I'm going to just do a little test run, see if you hear the sound.
Okay.
Because in your prayers in your
I
regular
can
language.
hear.
Okay. So they're talking about, like you said, demonology, angelology. Basically, who is this Satan character? And they're going to, I like how you titled this episode, Finding Satan, sort of akin to like Finding Nemo. They're going
Yeah.
to find a Satan. What they're not, like you said, they're not going to, I guess I do have something to say by way of intro. What they're not going to do is they're not going to help you understand how this Satan figure has been cobbled together. They're going to just make it some of this Voltron of a Satan, all these different passages that they were all trying to tell you about the same individual when actually they are not. But they're going to start off talking about misconceptions people have about Satan, and this will get us going. So I'll start them here. This is Vern on the screen now. He's going to toss it to. Vern sort of plays the role of hype man. Would you say?
Yeah, I had my own term for him. I called it Vernon's yes minstrelsy because this is in keeping with what I said in my previous episode where I talked about Black church minstrelsy. Well, and there is a sense in which Vernon he is the yes man to Dr. Mason's oratory. You regularly hear not only this is very well. We have the Ichaphants. Hopefully, all the Ichaphants in the house stand up. Well, what we have here is a true bona fide sycophant for Dr. Mace. That is in that no matter how much, so there might be only the slightest slither of actual textual meat and a whole lot of the special sauce of Dr. Mace. But what you will see, the one variable that is not a variable, it's a thread of continuity, is this sycophantic behavior of Vernon through the entire episode, both laughing, amening, maybe doing a little of both at
So
times.
all of
And
Pastor Mason's jokes are funny. All of his points hit home. All of his, insights are
yes,
powerful. There's, very little, if any, pushback. It's all amen, hallelujah.
yes, yes,
Okay.
yeah. So So to those who are with them, maybe they like it. Maybe he's saying the amen they can't say audibly on the podcast. But to those of us who are on the outside, it is a little, it's a little cringy sometimes. But let's listen to him. But at this point, this is who you're looking at. Vernon Mobley. He's a pastor at Epiphany. He has the floor.
All right.
This episode, we want to talk about who is this Lucifer, this Satan, right? And again, I mentioned some passages, but what are some of the things we hear? And if you want to pivot, we can. But what are some of the things we hear about Satan, just currently in our world?
He can't understand tongues.
Oh God, I've never heard this one, but I need to
speak. We pray in the spirit because because in your prayers in your regular language, Satan can snatch your prayers. I remember they used to tell us that. Where? What?
Please tell us where.
Yo, man, listen. What does he do?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We already got to pause. Okay. So imagine just like it's like your okay. I maybe, believe in, griffins or whatever, cherubim and seraphim, but your version of it, yours with the evil Grinch like Satan who's snatching prayer. Now that's that's one step too. That's where it becomes something that is beyond credibility. I can't believe that. Now I believe you're good. Later on in this episode, he starts talking about the principalities that are over districts, basically. Now that's believable. But the idea that you're sitting up a prayer, you start that's where I draw the line.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of that kind of commentary. If anybody's like, "What are you about to get into?" You're gonna see, and maybe they would say, "No, the reason why we can say that's crazy, but this is acceptable, is because we have a text telling us these things happen. We don't have a text telling us that Satan snatches prayer, even though they are going to talk about the Prince of Persia who
stopping
those
prayers, right?
Who prevented the angel from coming with a message for Daniel. So there is some biblical precedent for these satanic figures to stop something happening in the prayer world, but stopping it, your prayers being spoken in tongues and Satan not,
that's just a step too far.
That's a step too far. Yeah.
Now notice he didn't say the tongues themselves, right? Notice, it's like, oh no, the tongues are fine. The praying and the demonic kind of spirit, all of those variables are fine. It's just the element of him being able to stop that's where I draw the line. I'm sorry, I should be laughing. I'm having too much fun with this.
Confused when you speak in tongues.
Like the view is my prayer's going up like this, and as it's traveling, he can grab it. What in the world? But the one I keep hearing,
that what in the world is something that if you had just a little more, skepticism in you or, something, even the things in the text, you'd find yourself saying, what in the world? But we'll come back to that later.
It's very ironic. I mean, it's very ironic. Yeah.
What's the consistent?
And this is the one, because this is what sparked this episode. And I keep hearing, I've heard it ever since I became a believer. And I used to just go with it until I started studying the theology of angelology and anthropology and demonology, which is the biblical, well, particularly angelology and demonology is the study of spiritual beings. And so, and those are the ologies. And so when we look at those ologies and we have to understand, I thought that all heavenly beings that weren't humans and that wasn't the triune God were angels. And so I had to begin to work through, and a shout out to Mike Heiser, who was a big help with that, because he was the first person that I saw put, I guess, these things in the category in a good way. I don't agree with everything, but I do believe the categories he did a great job with.
Yeah.
So we got to talk about this right here.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said here. Do you want to go and jump in first, or do you want me to jump in on it?
Mine's going to be quick, and then you can take it where you're going to take it. I just think he gave a shout out to Dr. Michael Heiser. If you don't know Dr. Michael Heiser, he's passed away last year, or maybe this year. I'm not sure. I think it was earlier this year or late last year. Dr. Michael Heiser passed away. He was one of the very few evangelical Bible teachers who was trying to get the rest of the church community to pay attention to the passages in the Bible that would talk about gods, Gods, the Elohim, and particularly the B'nai Elohim, the sons of God, the sons of the Most High God, El Elyon. Then you have these lowercase g gods, sons. Michael Heiser was trying to get the church to pay attention to. No, these are actual. Sometimes he would say they're deities. Sometimes he would say they're angels. Sometimes he would say there's sort of a combination. But he would just say ancient Israel is getting that idea from the Canaanite divine council, where the god in Canaan, El, had a family of deities underneath him, but in Israel, they weren't necessarily gods as much as they were spirit beings or messengers or ministers and maybe lowercase g gods. Anyway, Michael Heiser trying to get the church to pay attention to that. But then Michael Heiser also wanted the church to pay attention to a lot of the intertestamental period literature as well, like the books of Enoch and things like that, where you find these characters come alive. The sons of God that you're told about in Genesis chapter 6, they get backstories in the intertestamental period, the books that we call the Apocrypha. Michael Heiser is trying to get the church to realize, no, that stuff is real. And so when you see Psalm 82, where God's judging the gods, or Deuteronomy 9, where the Most High is giving out inheritance to the nations, and he assigns to all his children, the B'nai Elohim, he assigns different nations to different gods, but keeps Israel for himself. Michael Heiser is trying to get the church to pay attention to all that. I just was trying to catch people up to who Dr. Michael Heiser is before I made my point. My point is this. Dr. Eric Mason just said, shout out to Michael Heiser because he helped me understand demonology and angelology and all this. But then he says something that's very important. He says, I don't agree with everything Dr. Michael Heiser says, but the categories that he set up for these angels and demons and the sons of God and the spirits of the watchers and all these different things. But when I heard him say, I don't agree with everything Dr. Michael Heiser says, it made me say, this seems like a very important issue for God and his Holy Spirit and his revelation and all that to have you walking around confused about. Like, Satan is your chief enemy. He's God's chief enemy. Why are you and other believers walking around in disagreement, not understanding, not being able to accept what each other thinks about your chief enemy? Like, Satan is the reason why we're in this mess. If you put Satan in the Garden of Eden in chapter 3 of Genesis, this is the main bad guy. And yet we're walking around confused about who this character is and what this character is like. And wasn't it Paul who says, I would not have you ignorant brethren of Satan's schemes? But like, it seems to me, this is one of the things as a Christian, you're most ignorant about, because even though you've got all these various passages, you don't know what to make of them. Heiser doesn't know what to make of them. He's got his ideas, you got your ideas, but I disagree with him about this, that, and the third. That just seemed very ironic to me, that one of your chief characters in your story are demons and devils and Satan, and you can't even agree on what they are up to and who they are.
I mean, it's very telling that Eric or Dr. Mason is doing his best when he mentions him, because he knows that he has what some would deem to be aberrant theology, right? Or angelology,
Yes,
I guess.
yes, yes.
He knows that okay, so there's something going on here. Dr. Mason knows that to mention Heiser is to say he's doing that's the deep cut, That's one of those, hey, my library runs pretty deep. I have Heiser in there, right? So he knows to a certain audience, they hear that, they know he's up on some of the latest ideas about this particular topic. Simultaneously, he's wanting you to know, I'm not running with whatever aberrant. So there's a certain person who hears Heiser and they're, what's going on here, Mace? Are you embracing this divine counsel, this counsel of gods? Is this what? And so for that person, and he knows that person will know that he knows. It's almost a dog whistle when he says, I don't agree with everything. Now he knows when he says that, the person who's like, they will be sated. They will then be able to lower their hand and listen to what the rest of the address. He knows this. And the point I was going to make, which was going to tie this back to one of the first Ichapod episodes, where he was being accused, that is Brady, Bishop Brady here on the screen, was being accused of being all over the place with his recruitment of different scholars to make different points, which was a large portion of Bishop Brady's point. A lot of his point was there isn't unanimity or consensus on these matters. There are various people I can recruit from people you guys respect and find competing ideas about these subjects. And that was part of the point that Brady was illustrating in his book, which, by the way, is in its second edition and soon to be released as an audiobook. You guys should pick that up on Amazon. But part of his point in recruiting all of these different authors who were accepted within Christianity was to show Christianity the mosaic that is present within Christianity on these theological matters. Some of the people, I guess that was too subtle of a point. Now, for those of you who are trekking with me right now or tracking with me, if you notice what I'm doing here is I'm looking at Dr. Mason, who has just done exactly what Brady did. He's taken and recruited Heiser, and then he's told you, wait a second, I don't agree with everything that he's saying, just like Brady did. For those, for you Christians who can recall the reviews that went up and people criticizing him for his recruitment of people, and they accuse him of being disingenuous. You're using him, but he doesn't agree with you. And Brady said, well, I was only using him to make this point.
Right.
And they said, oh, no, he's all over the place. Well, for those people who saw that interaction, it's still on YouTube. All you have to do is just go back on YouTube. You can watch those interactions happening. But the only difference there was you had an apostate, that is Brady, on one side of the argument, and you had Christians on the other side. And they weren't willing to give him the grace to recruit a person to make a specific point and then dip out the building for the rest. Well, that's exactly what Mace is doing. This is a long-winded kind of deep dive into that, but it's an important thing to note, because even as a counter-apologist or an atheist or agnostic, it's important that you be as gracious to your opponent as you would like them to be to you. In other words, the golden rule: to do to them what you would have them to do to you, even in discussion and argumentation. Don't, if you can allow your own apologist to recruit somebody like Michael Heiser, but say, nah, to the aberrant theology that, or what you deem to be aberrant, then you should be able to allow Brady to recruit people to make specific points and then dip out, right? That was a lot, but hopefully,
well said.
What do you think, Brady?
No, well said. Well said. Go back in. You ready?
And so the statement that you constantly hear is, Satan led heaven's choir.
Now hold on. I'm ready to start skipping around. I have points I want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to just let them play, or do you have do you know where you want to go?
I want he at some point reads from Heiser. I want to at least get to that part, and then you can take over. You know, at some point he starts reading some Heiser. I don't know where that is. I think it's around here though.
All right, let's let him play from
We'll listen to maybe a minute or two.
My next point is at 23. So if he doesn't get to seem like he's getting to it soon, I'm going to skip to 23.
Yep.
And he was the MD in heaven.
All right, Doc. So
now hold on. First off,
go for it.
Does the Bible even say that it has a choir in it? Like, that's first off.
Where is it?
Does the Bible even say that they play music? Like, do you hear what I'm saying? Like, I'm just asking.
I'm going to skip around.
I'm not saying there's not. So it says
when
when typifying him as what Satan tends to do, and you'll see in the Bible as the prince of this planet, is he tends to hide behind a ruler of the planet.
Yeah.
So what you'll see is here it's talking about Babylon, and later it's going to talk about the king, the prince of this Ezekiel.
Okay.
So it says when Ezekiel, but over to Isaiah, we'll come over to Ezekiel. Very limited worship framework, and I know where they get it from. They get it from
talk about it.
They get him being over the choir, and they take it from.
You probably have all heard somebody say something about Satan was in charge of music in heaven.
Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell said that, or at least implied that in one of his sermons. Yep.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I watched your video on that. I mean, what's crazy is as I don't even want to say unbiblical, because I think Mace is going to talk about this. There's a passage that you can go to get this idea of pipes or organs or something like that being a part of his construction.
You love organs. Yeah.
Or an organ being a part of his construction, or pipes or something like that. Mace is going to read that passage here and say, we'll see what he says about it. He's going to start going to the Isaiah passage, and then we'll start jumping around from there.
Very limited euphemistic language, right?
Sir.
So when you go over to not Ezekiel, but over to Isaiah, we'll come over to Ezekiel next, because it actually tells you what Satan is in Ezekiel. You know Ezekiel. So it says when typifying him as what Satan tends to do, and you'll see in the Bible as the prince of this planet, is he tends to hide behind a ruler of the planet.
Yeah.
So what you'll see is here.
This is going to come up in a little while. He's going to make this point again in a more interesting way, but let me just preface it with this. He says Satan hides behind rulers of this planet. Somebody said something under my video, I think with JR, where they talked about how satanic it was, or how demonic it was for us to be sitting there challenging God. And my response to him was, can you show me a demon without pointing to a person that you've demonized? I challenge any Christian, show me a demon without pointing to a human being that you've simply demonized somehow. You can't. And it's interesting because the book that Mace is holding in his hand, particularly everything on the left side of that book, which is the Old Testament, you're looking at ancient Israel, and at best, what you're looking at them doing, even if there is something like a Satan character in there, even before demons were a thing, even before Persia got their cultural hooks into Israel via Greece, because that's how it happened. Even before then, Israel was doing something like demonizing their enemies. So you talk about Lot having sex with his daughters, so that all the Moabites, everybody that comes from Lot, they're children of incest, right? You're doing all these things to, if not demonize yet, because demons hadn't really been introduced, at least dehumanize or make them look like the worst kinds of humans, right? The children of Ham are cursed, right? You're doing something to make them look like the worst kinds of humans. I say all that to say, so when May starts talking about Satan hiding behind princes and rulers of this world, Show me Satan behind them without pointing to these rulers. What you're doing is you're demonizing people. And out of that demonization, that's your demons now. That's your Satan now. You can't show me Satan without pointing to people that you've made satanic in your view. That's the scandal, I think.
I've never seen Superman and Clark Kent in the same place at the same time.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. For anybody who's like, what does that have to do with anything? Think about it. You've never seen demons and the demon possessed person at different times. You're always going to see them in one. Why? Because they're the same thing. You've demonized the person, and that's
well, you've never seen them separate but simultaneously.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
So that you're always filling the one with the other. Yeah.
Yeah. But all right.
It's talking about Babylon, and later it's going to talk about the king of Tyre. And so it's going to connect both. But you'll know in the language that you can't just say that this is the Babylonian king, right? Come on. Look at verse 9. It says, Sheol below is eager to greet your coming, stirring up the spirits of the departed for you.
This is Isaiah. Where can we just? He didn't start where we probably should have started. He started with what?
All right, I'll pull up the passage. I'll pull the passage up if you want me to. Okay,
I was going to read. Yeah, you pull it up. I'll stop sharing. You can pull it up.
You can read it if you want, but I'll pull it up and make it my screen. Can you guys see that? You should be able to. You see that right now, Brady?
I can't see it as well as I need to, but keep yours up. I'm going to read it from the NET because, as you know, the NET has delicious footnotes.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Are you going from verse 1 of 14?
Let me see. Yeah, let's just read what it's talking about because he's jumping right into he's jumping right into the passages that people want to try to make it seem like, oh, this is Satan. And he's going to try to show you how it actually is not just a person. But the context is God's going to redeem Israel. God's going to make Jacob, or the children of Jacob, he's going to make Israel a nation, a strong nation again. He's going to bring them out of captivity. And then God's going to judge the rulers and the nations that captured Israel. So that's what he's talking about here. Chapter 14, verse 1. The Lord will certainly have compassion on Jacob. He will again choose Israel as his special people and restore them to their land. Resident foreigners will join them and unite with the family of Jacob. Nations will take them and bring them back to their own place. Then the family of Israel will make foreigners their servants, and as they settle in the Lord's land, they will make their captors captives and rule over those who oppress them, over the ones who oppress them. Now, verse 3. When the Lord gives you relief from your suffering and anxiety and from the hard labor that you were made to perform, you will taunt who? Verse 4. You will taunt the king of Babylon with these words. Will you taunt Satan? He says, you will taunt the king of Babylon. All right, so just keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So with that in mind, I'm gonna go back to sharing. I'm gonna let Mace pick up what he's saying to the king of Babylon.
Okay.
All right. This is sort of a gruesome or grave, pun intended, taunt they're going to give about this king going into the earth, and the other kings of the earth who've already died are waiting for him.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just say that this is the Babylonian king, right? Come on. Look at verse 9. It says, Sheol below is eager to greet your coming, stirring up the spirits of the departed for you. All rulers of the earth, making all kings of the nations rise from their thrones. They all respond to you, saying, To you, you too have become weak as we are. You have become like us. Your splendor has been brought down to Sheol along with the music of your harps. Maggots are spread out under you, and worms cover you.
Yeah.
A shining morning star, how you have fallen from the heavens, you destroyer of nations. And then it goes on and on and on and on and on. Like, and so, and it talks about the pride of Lucifer, right?
Absolutely.
So what they do is people take, it says, your splendor has been brought down with the music of your harps. Now the question is, are maggots? Let's look at this now. If we're going to take this literally, you got to take everything in the verse literally.
Talk, man.
Now, are worms and maggots spread over Satan? No. It's a euphemism to talk about what happens when something dies, right? And it's decaying. It's talking about the state of his value now. It's not talking about him being maggots. And another thing we need to address is that Satan owns hell. Like,
yeah, okay, go ahead. What you got?
I was just going to make a little parenthetical comment about it being a euphemism. I don't know if that euphemism is the word he's looking for. So
no, it's not a euphemism. It's not even. It's not
euphemism. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's not even figurative. So here's what he's trying to do here. He's trying to bifurcate and say, he's trying to say clearly this is euphemistic. Why is it euphemistic for him? Because he wants there to be something in this passage that's dealing with Satan, but clearly not everything in it can be dealing with Satan, because Satan's not covered in maggots, nor will he because he's not going to go into the earth like people do. So for this to be able, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, get it off.
For this to be able, for this to be applied to Satan, you need something in here to be figurative, because if it's all literal, then this can't be Satan. But what he's doing is he's making this part that actually is literal, he's going to make it figurative, because Satan's not going to be buried. He's not going to be covered with maggots. So he's got to make this figurative so that it actually can apply to Satan.
Yes.
But here's the strange.
And that's why it's important for me to.
Go ahead.
That's why it's important for you to make the comment I was going to make, because he's using the wrong word. You just used the correct word, which is a figure of speech or figurative language. Euphemisms are words or phrases that we use that are clouding something that's a more negative reality, or that is thought of negatively. So a person will say, "Can I go to the bathroom?" when they're not intending to take a bath, they're intending to urinate or defecate. So, but because in polite company, you don't say, "Can I go to the defecation room?" because then it just we don't like talking about those things publicly. So we say, "Can I go to the bathroom?" So a euphemism it tends to tone down a thing in order to cover over. So what he's thinking, and that's why I was saying this is an incidental correction, but what he's thinking is figurative language and not euphemistic, because how is it euphemistic to describe maggots eating away? If anything, you're being more descriptive of the state of death than just to say death. So that's not a euphemism, but I think he meant figurative.
But add on top of that, though, there is imagery in here. It's just not the parts that he's talking about. The imagery is the kings of the earth that have already died, waiting for you to join them in Sheol and welcoming you. That's imagery. The author is not saying that these kings are literally still alive and literally going to welcome you. It's figuratively saying you're going to go where they went. You're going to go the way of all the earth. The maggots part is not figurative. He's literally saying you're going to die like men die,
because you're be eaten by maggots.
Exactly. But he needs parts of this verse to be more figurative, because he wants there to be a Satan character in this passage.
Yeah.
So he's forcing figurative language in here where there's not, so that he can get his Satan character out of it.
And it's important to, I guess, to piggyback on what you're saying there, it's important to note the very heavy hand of Dr. Eric Mason here, because the text doesn't require that. Now, again, remember I was talking about the special sauce of Dr. Mason at the top of this program. The text, if you read it, it doesn't require you to fill that with a Satan character.
Right.
It doesn't. It does not do that at all. In fact, it reads much better if you read it as poetry describing an earthly king. But because he wants to get this univocal kind of testimony of this character, and you're going to see this in other passages that he's going to. That's why it's so important that I just stop talking and let him talk. But you will see that it's almost like the desire and the felt need to have a consistent testimony to this character throughout this. He puts on so much gravy that there's hardly any meat there. There's just a lot of gravy to kind of fill in the space. But yeah, I'm sorry.
And one more thing is important. He says, what did he say? He says, if you take this literal, you have to take everything in the verse literally. Is that how Christians really interpret the Bible? If you take one thing in the passage literally, you take everything in that passage literally? Because if so, I submit to you Isaiah 53. The servant passages in Isaiah 40, what is it? I think it's 42 when the servant passages start. Those servant passages, very many of them could never be applied to Jesus. But you jump into select parts of Isaiah 53 and you make that apply to Jesus. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquity. Read the entire 53. You don't apply all that to Jesus. So I'm just saying that to say, to tell somebody else that you can't take this one part literally without taking the entire thing literally, you do it all the time.
They do it in Genesis.
How about it?
The history of the science doesn't add up. They're like, all right, we can't take that literally, but we will take the genealogy literally.
Right.
You know,
we'll take 126 literally. We're made in the image. We'll take that, but we won't take the sun being created on day one, and then light being created on day one, and then the sun being created on day 4. We won't take that literally.
Absolutely.
But if you're going to take one thing in the passage literally, yeah.
Note Vernon's minstrelsy or the sycophantic behavior that you're seeing, because no matter when Vernon could have put his index finger up and said, wait a second. As soon as May said that, I was like, even within poetry, you don't always, the poetry never, like the rule that he lays down as being kind of like a rule of thumb that it must always be taken. If one thing is in a passage, it's literal. It's like, that's not even how poetry always works.
Right.
like, you know, like to say that if one thing is quote unquote taken literally, everything else has, I don't know that that's necessary all the time. Like you can go, that's not how literature works, but go ahead.
No, like I just said, the maggots covering you, that's a literal prediction you're going to die. The kings of the earth waiting for you, that's not literal. So automatically in this passage, you have things that are meant to be taken literally and things that are meant to be taken figuratively as imagery. But like I said, because of his end goal is I want Satan here, but I know certain things. I don't want the music part, you know, the harps. I don't want that part to apply to Satan. So I'm going to make that figurative. That's what he's doing here. He's bifurcating it that way.
Now, if we zoom out with our telescope, this is going to be very short because we got to let him talk. But if we zoom out, you have to ask yourself, why this kind of textual jujitsu, and why is this being engaged in? It's because you've got this huge caricature of Satan, and there is no actual villain origin story that's consistent in anywhere. So you have to cobble one together. You have to build it, you know, much like the griffins that they're going to be talking about later in this episode, the cherubim, which will have the wings of an eagle and the whatever else of a lion. And, you know, you're going to have to put together your Satan figure from different texts because there isn't a just direct villain origin story. So you just know later on he appears to be an enemy, but there's no real explanation in the text given for why he's an enemy and where he comes from. Yeah. And so some people, you know, I guess this is in keeping with Christians who want answers to everything, rather than to just say, oh, we don't know where he comes from and he's just our enemy. That's not going to cut it for them, right, Brady?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I'm going to let them talk here because I want people to understand. We're not going to watch all of this. We're not getting up to. Okay, I don't think we're going to get past 36 minutes into this video. I think that's probably as far as we're going to get because there's so much coming up.
Okay.
But just so you guys know that as you're watching, we're not planning to watch this entire video.
And I'll dial back commentary just so we can get through as much of it as we can.
It's this like Tom and Jerry where demons are down there tormenting you in hell. Like they're afraid of hell, actually. So we'll talk about that in a minute, right? So basically they talk about the music of your hearts. Now I'm gonna pull up a background commentary real quick.
Let's do it.
I'm gonna go into Logos real quick, and I'm gonna pull up with that one. All right, here we go. So it's already linked. So let's see if it even deals with it, because it makes me mad when they don't be dealing with the verse. I'll be like, Doc, y'all got to come on with it. Let's see if they deal with verse. We're gonna go through and just look at some of the ways in which, But basically, I mean, they do pick up on the corpse part where it's talking about, there is nothing but silence and rotting corpse covered with worms. The picture is like something. And when we go over to Ezekiel 28, that's what you call it.
Did you just fast forward again?
We're gonna go.
I did. I'll go back if you want me to.
Can you go back just so they can hear that quote?
Covered with worms. The picture is like something by Bosch, where behind a lovely feminine face we glimpse a decaying, grinning skull. And so he's basically talking about the fact that human.
Bosch there, for those who don't know what he's talking about with Bosch there, that's a reference to Hieronymus Bosch, who was a painter, a European painter, who would create very macabre scenes. He did one of paradise and of hell. So you can look him up on your free time. But that's a reference to Hieronymus Bosch. And so, no, that he just, go ahead. Keep going.
Pretty trappings on a corpse. And so he likens him to no longer having what's called life, but now functioning in comprehensive death. All right. So now we're going to go to Ezekiel.
I reject that.
He doesn't really deal with that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, just the idea that the death language in Isaiah 14 is like all the death language is imagery. It's not really saying that God's going to judge the ruler. I think I think Isaiah 14 is the writer giving Israel comfort to know that our God's going to judge the one who put us in this situation. God's going to kill
by putting him to death.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ezekiel 28. And when we go over to Ezekiel 28, that's what you call for me. There we go. We're going to go over to Ezekiel 28, and we're going to look at some verses, right?
Yeah.
And one of the main ones that I want to look at.
A lot of people get their chief information about Satan from. They find Satan here.
It's going to be verse 14 because it's going to tell you who the heck Satan is.
Yeah.
But let's read from the top, by the way. Right?
What'd you say?
I dealt with that via a sermon by Philip Anthony Mitchell about how he just danced all over that text, engaging in eisegesis. It was crazy, ignoring actual textual information pointing to this being about the king of Tyre. Just totally ignoring that that's in the actual text, that it's a prophecy about the king of Tyre, and just jettisons that and just goes right to the Satan thing and just rejects the idea that it is about an earthly king.
Yeah. And now here's the thing. This Ezekiel 28 prophecy against the king of Tyre, he's going to make the point that behind this king, once again, you've got this satanic figure behind the rulers of this world. And I'm going to challenge who he's saying this king of Tyre is actually being compared to. But let's let him get there.
It says, the word of the Lord, verse 11, came to me. Well,
let me see if we want to start that far in. So you got the Prince of Tyre up in verse 2.
When you pull a passage up, I can pull a passage up on my screen. I don't know how helpful it'll be, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I'll pull it up for the folks.
So Ezekiel, I wonder 28. If, let me see, Prince. So in verse 2, it says, it's in the NET, verse 2 is translated ruler of Tyre. or it's translated in NET, Prince of Tyre, but the word is actually could be translated ruler. In verse 11, where he's picking up, where it says King of Tyre, I don't have a note here, so I'm wondering what word they're using here for King of Tyre. Is it the same word as ruler, or is it actually the word Malek? Is it the word king here?
But note that the text itself says, "Son of man," speaking to Ezekiel, raise a lamentation over the king of Tyre. Like,
True.
so the following words are, oh, they're over the king of Tyre. So the idea that you would just like, well, I know Philip Anthony Mitchell just jettisons that idea that it's about him at all. And I don't know that Mace, I can't remember if Mace says, oh, this is a twofold kind of prophecy. I'm assuming, I don't know how he could ignore that, because it says it in the text. This is also supposedly inspired prophecy against the Prince of Tyre. Yeah. So it's like, give me a break. Like, but I guess he's saying the Prince of Tyre is not indeed the Prince of Tyre. It's some sort of other figure.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he would separate, because like I said, in the version that you have on the screen, you have the ESV. Is verse 2 different than verse 11? Is it the King of Tyre in one and Prince of Tyre in another, or is it both Prince?
Verse 2 says the Prince of Tyre, and then you said in what verse?
11. Verse 11.
Verse 11. I'm scrolling up right now. Verse 11 says the King of Tyre.
Right. So I'm wondering, does it use two different words in the Hebrew, and that's why it's translated as prince in one and king in the other? And either way, I wonder for Mace, does that
would be really ignorant and stupid to get that literal with it, because in Hebrew poetry, they often use parallelisms where they will speak of, they'll say, they'll use something like a merism. They'll say evening and morning, or they'll say, and they're trying to denote the whole day, or they'll say, night after night, they pour forth, day after day, they pour forth knowledge. Night after night, they pour forth speech. Speech is parallel to knowledge, and day and night are parallel to each other. It's another way of saying the full day. So to say king and prince here is a parallelism. Parts of the prophets are definitely written. That's why these are featured here in poetic stanzas instead of as other passages that are written, because this is poetry. So to take Prince and very ignorantly say that it must mean a different character is to totally miss the point of the reason why this is being presented.
I'm not saying that he or anybody would say that it must mean, but somebody could say that it could be. And the only reason why that matters is because in the first 10 verses, you have things being said to the ruler of Tyre that if you wanted to, you could decouple them from what's being said from verses 11 on by use of that mnemonic device, by saying that prince is one ruler and king is a different ruler. I'm just trying to give any kind of leeway, because he's starting at verse 11 as opposed to starting at verse 1. And I'm wondering if that's because it says things in the first 11 verses that kind of clue you in to the fact that this is probably more likely a human being and not a god, or not a Elohim or a Satan figure. I don't know if he would take that escape route or not.
Again, like this is the irony is that just a few moments ago he's like, if you're going to read the one part like this, you're going to have to read the other part like this. Well, if you're reading a poetic passage, like why are you slicing and dicing it this way? Whatever. It seems a bit.
Well, because there are things in the verse. There are things in the first 10 verses that do clue you in that this cannot be a divine being you're talking to, because you think you are God. Verse 7, because you think you're a god, like I'm about to bring foreigners against you. Are you going to bring foreigners against Satan? This is clearly talking about a human individual. They will draw their swords against They will draw their swords against the grandeur made by your wisdom. They will defile your splendor. They will bring you down to the pit, and you will die violently in the heart of the seas. Will you say, I am a god before the one who kills you? So I'm just saying that to say there could be enough reason in the first 10 verses to make him say, I don't want to start there, because clearly we're talking about a human being.
Well, in verse 16, this is what I pointed out on the pod that I did a couple weeks back. Verse 16 doesn't allow for that doesn't make any sense. In the abundance of your trade, you were filled with violence in your midst, and you sinned. He's talking about a people. He's talking about a civilization. Violence was found in your midst. Well, I mean, how do you make sense of abundance of your trade? I mean, clearly this is poetical language, and then he goes into speaking about how they were trading, they were filled with violence, they sinned, right? They profaned, and so it's mixing and matching poetical language with references to an actual historical civilization, but the whole thing is addressed to an actual civilization, whatever.
Let's see what he does with this, because he's going to get into some things that take us into Genesis, and there's an interesting combo to be had there as well. So let's let him cook for just a minute, and then we'll have to pause him again.
No.
Tell you
One
who
second.
the heck Satan is.
But
let's read.
Yep.
Because in 18 it talks about the unrighteousness of your trade. Again, you profaned your sanctuaries. Okay, now you got sanctuaries. So I brought fire from your midst, and it consumed you, and I've turned you to ashes on earth. Come on, man. Like,
well, we're not there yet. Let's let
him cook.
Eat from the top, right? It says, the word of the Lord, verse 11, came to me, son of man, lament the king of Tyre, and say to him, this is what the Lord says, you were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God, even every kind of precious stone covered you. Listen to these. Carnelian, topaz, and diamond, beryl, and jasper, lapis lazuli. You know, there's a sneaker called lapis lazuli.
I didn't know that.
The baklavas, the second one that came out.
Really?
Lapis lazuli. Yep. See?
Come on, dog.
Lapis lazuli is a
beryl, onyx,
colored,
jasper,
mineral.
lapis lazuli, turquoise. A lot of people wear turquoise stones now. Emerald. Your mountings and settings were crafted in gold. They were prepared on the day you were created. He said, so God sons them right here. He said, fam, I put all that together. And created you.
I made you.
He sons them. Then he says, you were.
So he's taking all that literal. There's nothing figurative in any of that. God literally made this being with precious stones. Now, first of all, you got to think about how wild this is, because you're talking about spiritual entities, but spiritual entities being made with material. And there's a sense in which somebody could say, well, in the ancient world, they would not have seen spiritual as ethereal the way we do. They would have seen the spiritual as actually being more real than our world, not less, not less real, but still, whatever these spiritual beings are, if this is literal and talking about Satan, God made a spirit being with gemstones from earth.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it seems to me the easier reading of that is to assume that it's a reference to this place, this actual civilization on the planet having these precious minerals there in its midst, like lapis lazuli, which is just a blue mineral that is it's used in all kinds of things, like paint objects and vases and so forth. It's a very beautiful mineral, and so like the other minerals that are mentioned, these are rare, expensive gemstone type minerals that are found in actual locations on the planet. It's just think of him describing the Congo, where there is great mineral wealth, where you have coltan and cobalt and all kinds of things. You would say you had all these things. You got puffed up. You had gold. You had iron. You had coltan, and then you got puffed up. This is a similar kind of thing to say. It's not to say that this is an actual creature, that it wouldn't even make sense, because these are inorganic, inert elements. These aren't the kinds of things. Lapis lazuli is a mineral. It's like, are you telling me this guy had gemstones? Like, I mean, give me a break. This doesn't make any sense. It's an easier read to see it as speaking of a land. and not of an actual description of a physical creature. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A worship leader. You were anointed organist.
He's being facetious right here. He's going to walk this back in a second.
Yeah.
You were an anointed drummer. No. You were a guardian cherub.
Wait, go back. Because this is what people use, though.
Right.
You know what I mean?
We're not going to do a whole study on the cherubim.
What'd you say?
Because when he says you were a guardian cherub, that's important, because guarding you from what? If if I am to take him seriously and he thinks this is an angelic being, what do you need a guardian cherub in heaven for?
Yeah, for the sake of time, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it in enough time. I think Mace does this, but a lot of people do this. They look at verse 13 where it says, "You were in Eden, the garden of God," and they do the math and they say, wait. Isaiah's time, this would have been thousands of years, at least a few thousand years after what they would have thought was the beginning of the world. How could the Prince of Tyre have been in the garden of God in Eden? And so that's one of the main proofs that they use to say, so that's got to be that this Prince of Tyre cannot be talking about a human being living at their time. They have to be talking about a spiritual being behind that person. And then you put that together with church tradition. What spiritual person was in the Garden of Eden other than God? Oh, the serpent. This has to be Satan. The serpent in the garden has to be Satan. And then this prince here is being spoken to as that guardian cherub, as that serpent in the garden who was in the garden of God. They do all that and they say, see, this is proof. Ezekiel must have believed that Satan was in the Garden of Eden. Satan was.
Yeah.
I can't go all into it now, but there is, I heard Dr. Kip Davis say this recently. I put this in my book, the first edition of Let There Be Gaslight. I hadn't heard anybody else say it until Kip Davis said it a little while ago, but it's actually more likely that the person in the Garden of Eden that this prince is being compared to is not the serpent. It's actually Adam that this prince is being compared to, because Adam was the one who was called a servant or guardian. That's another way that word can be translated when it said that Adam was placed in the garden to keep it. That word keep could mean to guard it. So he was the guardian of the garden. And the judgment that comes upon Adam in Genesis 3 is interesting. Both the snake and Adam are told they're going to have some kind of relation to the ground. The serpent is going to crawl on its belly from that point on, but Adam is going to return to the ground. And this prince is told in this judgment here in Ezekiel that you're going to go back, you're going to be in the dust. So is the prince being compared to the serpent who crawls on its belly and eats dust? Or is the prince being compared to Adam who returns to the dust? Well, the serpent was never the guardian of the garden, and the serpent was not the cherub. Adam was not the cherub, but he was a guardian. He was the one to keep the garden. Anyway, all that to say, if one of the strongest things that people use to say that Satan must have been in the garden is this verse, that all falls apart if this verse 13, is talking about Adam and not Satan. And I think a case can be made for that. So that's all I was going to say. I saw you put the griffins up on the screen. Should I let Mace go?
I guess it should be probably pointed out that when you're saying Adam, he's addressing this king as a man who's basically in Adam, essentially, like a man. Like you're a human being, right? Is that what you're saying? Well,
there's some of the parallels to Adam is this. You were set up in the perfect place. There's no reason why you should have. Right. You had utopia. You wanted for nothing. and you let that go to your head. Matter of fact, the verses that he skipped here, verses 1 through 10, says you wanted to be like God. Well, who was in a perfect place set up for success and did something that they thought would make them more like God? That's Adam. And so what I'm saying,
Adam, yes.
yeah, what makes him Adam-like here, what makes this prince Adam-like is you were set up for success, you had all you could want for, and you tried to be more like God than you were meant to be. And that led to your downfall.
Yeah.
Now you're going to return to the dust.
I think it's important for us to let Mace articulate his doctrine about the cherubim or cherubim.
Yeah.
So we can see. I put these pictures up here just so you understand. They will make more sense. What did he says? You don't understand it now in Revelation, but you will understand it hereafter. You've seen the images of the cherubim or these griffins. Now let Mace talk, and you will see what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'll suggest and encourage you to study it for yourself. Look at Mike Heiser stuff and get in the text.
Yeah.
Unseen realm. But so when you go over to Daniel,
So should I have gone back to get those?
Like who this man is?
Because he says some interesting stuff
like,
about.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was a little Freudian
slip.
slip by Vern right there about who we're talking about in this passage. I'll let him get to it.
Drums.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's no spot for drummers in heaven. There's nothing saying that when Vernon gets there, I'm gonna be one of the drummers.
I'm sorry. Just these are thoughts that are popping into my head. The asymmetry between when Mace laughs at Vern's jokes and when Vern laughs at Mace's jokes, you see that asymmetry there. That's where you get that, like you said, that yes minstrelsy. Mace almost gives like pity laughs, whereas Vern is tickled pink with everything that Mace says. That stood out to me.
Yeah, indeed.
Out of the million people who have passed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So why do people like pick apart to try to make this make sense? Like they see something like this in verse 13, but we see obviously in verse 14 exactly who he says, like who this man is, who Satan is, right? Yep.
You see what Vern just said there, right? Who this man is.
He had to correct them real quick. Mace even came in and said he made sure they reeled that in real quick.
Let me play it again.
They see something like this in verse 13, but we see obviously in verse 14 exactly who he says, like who this man is, who Satan is, right? Yep.
Yeah. So one of the things that you can see is a couple of things. We're not going to do a whole study on the cherubim. I'll suggest and encourage you to study it for yourself. Look at Mike Heiser stuff and get in the text. Yeah. Unseen realm. But
it's one of the worst things you could tell. You could tell somebody to get in the text as if that's going to solve things for you. Getting in the text is just going to make it more messy for you.
Let's just pause it real fast. I just want people to consider. I'm not going to take long with this. I just want people to consider what he's trying to get you. We're getting ready to go into the year 2025. We're in the 21st century. Mace is commending you taking this seriously. He's commending getting into the text and studying so you know a little more about these kinds of characters. You see, this has a head of a man, and even some part of me wonders how much they even took this stuff seriously. Literally, at least. Did they actually think these creatures, or did they want their pharaohs to embody certain properties of a lion and, have the wisdom of a man? So they put the head of a man on the body of were they thinking this was literally? Maybe they thought this was the case. Maybe it was symbolic and then it came to be taken more seriously in literature as time went on. Who knows? But this is the kind of thing that you have like a ram's head with eagles. Now, these creatures aren't very different from the creatures described in some of these prophetic books. That's what I'm saying. This imagery comes from a context where this is how people envisioned supernaturalistic kind of beings. And we're going into the year 2025, and he's telling you, go to your books and study this so you can actually get a grasp on these things. This is nonsense. Like, these are not things. Like, they're not real.
Yeah.
Like, I'm only pointing this out to just say that. That's it, right? I'll bail out here.
All right.
This is not real.
We got a few more clips, then we out of here.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So when you go over to Daniel, the 10th chapter, right?
Yeah.
It'll say in verse 12, it'll say this in the context of this is an angelic conflict while Daniel's been praying and he's looking for his prayer to be answered.
This is what J-Wit said at the beginning. If you assume a univocality, you have no limit to the resources. Like it's almost like the painter. If you only got two colors on your palette, you can create some things, but you're limited. If you've got unlimited, you've got the 98 Crayola crayon box on your palette. You're unlimited in terms of what you could mix together to create new colors and if you think that all of the Bible is inspired by the same God, you've got no limit in terms of what verses you can tie together to make some things work. And so what you're about to see is Mace tie things from Daniel into Isaiah, into Ezekiel to get this demonology or this Satanology out of it.
So he's fasting. He says, "Don't be afraid, Daniel." He said to me, "For from the first day that you purposed to understand, to humble yourself before your God, your prayers were heard. I have come because of your prayers. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia opposed me for 21 days." So before we even say this, now you got to understand, at this time in Daniel's historiography, Persia is the new Babylon. It's running that part of the known world.
Yeah.
So whenever there's a power in place, demons always get behind them. So when he says the prince of Persia, he's not talking about the Persian
Pause,
king's
pause that real
son.
quick.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, but I just want to I just want to quickly say that when he says that, ask yourself, why should I assume that that's factual? Like, what is that based on? That statement he made, whenever there's an important power, there's demons behind it. Where did you get that from?
Well, think about how that forces you to look at the world. You look at the world through the lenses of somebody's in power, there's a demon behind that. Somebody's in power, there's a demon behind that. It warps your view of the world.
Oh, yeah. It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's on top of just being absurd and having no basis in any kind of, like, he's constantly talking about going to the text. Where do you get that? So even if you saw 5 passages where there were powerful people and there was a demon mind, that doesn't mean that every person, like, that's a small pool. That's 5 leaders. Even if you found 5, you probably would think that's a lot.
Well, no. Mm-hmm. Remember, he's a student of Michael Heiser. And I think I may have talked about my podcast before. One of the things that Michael Heiser teaches is that in Deuteronomy chapter 9, when the Most High divvied out to his sons, the B'nai Elohim, the sons of El, and the Most High divvied out the inheritances to his sons, it was like, you get a nation, you get a nation, you get a nation. All the nations of the world were given out to the sons of El. And so their rulers behind them. Now, the weird thing that you have to wrestle with is Michael Heiser takes you further and says, but in Psalm 82, the reason why, in Psalm 82 says the Most High sits among the gods and judges. And then in Psalm 82, he's going to say, I say ye are gods, but you'll die like men. Where basically this is El Elyon judging the Elohim for not judging justly amongst the gods that he gave these nations to. So somewhere in the timeline, you've got these lowercase g gods ruling over all the nations. So maybe in Daniel's day, maybe even today, even though it doesn't make sense if God judged them and dethroned them, in some kind of way, I think Mace does, if he's following Michael Heiser, he does have room to say, no, behind every ruler, there's at least a God, lowercase g, if not a demon, a dethroned lowercase g, who still finds a way to rule. So I think if he's a student of Heiser, he might be able to say, no, I got Bible to back me up on that. All I'm saying is that's a warped way to look at the world, where you have to look around and see a demon behind every ruler.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it also doesn't do away with what I was saying, because nations are born and like, what did they carved up Africa in the early 20th century and made nation a bunch of, so what you say, they automatically have demons flocking to every place that they made a border?
Well, look, that's why it's so chaotic over there. That's why there's so much evil over there.
Okay, come on. Go.
No, but what it does is
this is ridiculous.
It keeps you from seeing the full breadth of humanity, the good, the bad, the ugly. This is what people do. But if you demonize the people, you don't see people anymore. You just see demons behind them.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, let's let him cook on his what was it, cherubim?
Yeah.
It's talking about principalities, powers of wickedness and rulers in high places,
Yeah.
Ephesians 6.
Yes, sir.
So you go here and you say, oh, so if this is the prince, you go over here, back to this, and you look at verse 12 of chapter 28. It says, lament for the king of Tyre. So it's talking about Satan. Satan always is the.
You gotta pause it real fast. What is so profound about that? Like, it's like this guy's laughing like this is like, whoa,
no.
This is not.
J-Wit, I don't think you get that. Actually, is profound what Michael Heiser does there. If I'm not mistaken, Mace is getting this from Heiser. There actually is something very creative about that, because ordinarily you would have just saw Prince of Tyre and said, "Wait, that's got to be a human," and these verses are just imagery. Then you go and see the Prince of Babylon in Isaiah and say, oh, that's got to be a human. These verses are imagery. But then you go to Daniel and you see the Prince of Persia stopped this archangel from delivering a message. Wait, prince. So the princes in Isaiah and Ezekiel, they're like the same kind of prince that we saw in Daniel. They're not human beings. These are spiritual beings. Every time I see the word prince, is a demon, is a spirit being. That's actually kind of creative to do that, I would say.
Yeah, you think it's creative when you do that for a Prince of Peace? Like, it's totally capricious and arbitrary. Like, come on, man. Like, it's like, at what point are you talking about an actual prince or a king? Like, it's like wherever it's convenient, you will do this, or wherever it's not, you won't. It's very Peter Enzian, if I may say.
Yeah, I hear you. Going back in on him. I liked that. I'm just saying, if I was a Christian still, I would have been like, oh, that's how you square that circle. I would have accepted that as a Christian.
Influence in the kingly role of whoever is the ruler of the known world.
Take him back.
Tyre. Back to this. And you look at verse 12 of chapter 28, it says, lament for the king of Tyre. So it's talking about Satan. Satan always is the influence in the kingly role of whoever is the ruler of the known world.
Man.
Now, here's what's a little like, how'd you make that leap? Because it's one thing to say the Prince of Persia that prevented this archangel from delivering this message or whatever. Daniel doesn't say that that's a spiritual being or not. It just says that the prince held him back for 21 days. We don't know how, if that was a human being, how that would have been possible. But we're not told whether it's a spiritual being or not. At least I don't think we are. But even if it is a spiritual being, we're not told that it's Satan. But Mace makes the leap that whenever you see a prince behind this ruler, that it's actually Satan, not just a demon or demonic entity, it's actually Satan. So he's made a leap here that not even, I don't think Michael Heiser would have made that stretch to say that these princes behind, these spiritual princes or, whatever, behind these earthly princes is actually Satan himself. That's a leap that I don't think you could actually make.
along with being the informal fallacy of composition, which I spoke of on my last video on my channel, which is to say what is true of a part of a thing is true of the whole. So you go to this one passage, even if you do have a univocal view of the text, just because you see that in Daniel doesn't mean that every time you see princes anywhere that you can apply that there. That's the fallacy of composition. Everywhere you see it, you can feel this is a informal fallacy that's not basically it's what you call a leap. It's a leap in logic.
All right.
It's a leap in logic.
We got at least 5 more minutes to get through here.
And so when we talk about that, when we talk about principalities, we're not just talking about principalities within neighborhoods. Like Satan has never been to your house. You don't have enough power for Satan to literally give you a visitation. Satan only visits high-ranking officials. That's why Satan went after Jesus in Matthew chapter 4. So when we look at that, that's why because Peter was going to be the leader of the church, he asked Jesus? He has specifically asked, "Can I want to sift him like some wheat."
But same thing for what is he? He goes to like the Lord in Job.
Absolutely.
And ask like I've been looking around.
Yeah, I've been looking around.
I've been surfing.
And what's interesting is they believe that Job was actually Edomite, but that maybe I don't even know if during that time there was any rule. It may have been a nomadic period. So he was just looking for people, which now he I don't want to get off subject because I want to go
back. I wonder how much of that I don't want to get off the subject is he realized I just kind of contradicted myself, because to say I don't even know if there were any rulers at that time, but Satan was just going around looking for people. But you just said Satan's not coming to like just any and everybody. So
yeah, exactly.
Yep,
let's not go down that deep dive.
Yeah.
It says, the Net Bible says, "I placed you there with an anointed guardian cherub." So
he's back in Ezekiel. Yeah, he's back in Ezekiel.
This is what I was trying to get to.
28. Yeah.
You were on the holy mountain of God. Yeah. Right. And so when we look at you were an anointed cherub. In other words, he was amongst the cherubim. Now different guardian cherub lets you know that cherubs had different roles.
Come on, man.
Okay. Now, if you go to Ezekiel, we just don't have time because I don't want to buzz y'all all over the place. Good. But when you go to Ezekiel 1, 2, and 3, the chapters, you will see that there's some cherubim that carried Jesus in heaven. They're like chariots for him. They have wheels. And so when you look at this guardian cherub, this Satan was actually
pause this junk. Pause this junk, man. Like, come on, man. What are we talking about? I gotta show these guys the Griffins again. This is what we're talking about, huh? This is what we're talking about. Wait, so I read in a text that there were these kinds of creatures. Okay, go ahead.
Let's let him cook, because he's going to get into the whole. He's going to get into some stuff that's really going to make this sing.
One of those who guarded the throne of God. That's what he did.
Yeah,
guarded the throne of God from who? From what?
From who?
Why does God need a bodyguard?
What? Why is God wasting resources? Why is he wasting resources? Like what? It's like if you're in heaven, you don't have locks on your doors, right? Because there's nobody to steal. So why would you have a guard angel? Like for what? This is the for what question is so profound, because it's like, first of all, you're omnipotent. You don't need a bodyguard.
But you know what this is? This is fan fiction. This is
you don't need a bodyguard if you're omnipotent. You don't need a bodyguard, right? If you're immortal, what does Paul say?
What did Jesus need wheels, cherubim with wheels for? Like if you're before you're contained and localized in the body, aren't you omnipresent? What do you need cherubim with wheels carrying you around for? Like what the hell?
Like it seems to make sense. if you're finite or if you have limitations, but if you're a God who's just overflowing with omnis, like what the hell do you need any of this? You don't need the reason for bodyguards and guards are to protect you from danger. If there is no danger, how can you have danger if you're omnipotent? There is no danger.
We haven't even gotten to the most
Yeah. Let him cook a little more.
Yeah. And so did he worship? Of course, he worshiped. He with everybody else.
Everybody,
because they're up there saying holy, 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 right? And so with him and so I want to read a couple of stanzas on some stuff of what cherubim actually is. So in what am I reading this from? I'm reading from the Baker Encyclopedia of the Bible, because this will kind of sum it up for us. And if they need to, I'll put this on the screen. But it says winged creatures, cherub or cherubim, right? Winged creatures mentioned occasionally in Scripture. Cherubim is the plural form of the Hebrew word cherub. Reason why I'm saying cherub, because it's a che in our language it would be a ch, but it's a guttural kind of ch sound in Hebrew. Okay, they belong to a supernatural created order along with the seraphim and angels. So again, they're part of the created order. Some scholars have argued that the term cherub had its origin in caribou or intercessor in Akkadian mythological texts, commonly represented Mesopotamian art as griffin, a creature half lion, half eagle, or as winged human. The Sphinx also appears to go back to the concept. The biblical evidence, however, does not seem to support that. Now we're going to go down.
He's reading from a commentary that says the idea of cherubim, looks like it comes from ancient Mesopotamian mythological figures, like much of Genesis 1 through 11. Surprise. But then at the end, it says, but the biblical, the Bible doesn't seem to support that. It's almost like, clearly we got this from myth. But when you find it in our text, it's not myth. We're not doing what they're doing, even though we kind of got our thing from them. But when we do it, it's real. That's sort of what he just said there.
Well, they mentioned Sphinx. They mentioned a Sphinx. Mm-hmm. Like, come on, man. Like, in other words, understand how ununique or not unique this is for you. You know, understand how parochial this is and how just pedestrian it is and how uninspired, if I could use the word. But go ahead. Let him go.
Or as winged human, the Sphinx also appears to go back to the concept. The biblical evidence, however, does not seem to support that. Now we're going to go down. The prophet Ezekiel described 4 living creatures, each with 4 faces and 4 wings. That's what I was telling y'all about. In Ezekiel chapter 1, verses 5 through 24, it's going to talk about those creatures. Those creatures corresponded with what? Cherubim. So what were cherubim able to do? They had multiple faces because they were shapeshifters. Yeah. That's why in second.
You did just hear this grown man. You did just hear this grown person.
Good Lord.
Say that they had 4 different faces. Now, these beings in the text had 4 different faces simultaneously. They weren't shifting. They didn't have one face and then shift the face number 2 and face number 4. They had 4 faces simultaneously. But he hears that, he reads that, and he says, they were shapeshifters. Now, watch what they do with that.
No.
Chapter 11 with what? Cherubim. So what were cherubim able to do? They had multiple faces.
This will be really fast. Mm-hmm. But just consider the fact that if you have the ability to shapeshift, what the hell do wings for? Like,
well, shapeshifting is not your mode of traveling.
No, but I don't think you understand what I'm saying. If you have this basically a supernatural ability to shift your face, wings are needed because the laws of physics apply. In order to defy gravity, you have to have a mechanism, i.e. wings, to fly, because you're obviously functioning within the natural world. But if you're doing some ish like shape shifting, that means that you're not beholden to the laws of physics.
No. So
Because
you have not watched you've not watched enough X-Men movies or read comics.
Oh my good. Okay, all right.
Because no. This is hey, no, look, this is what we're talking about here.
Oh.
This is what we're talking about. Because clearly, based on the laws of X-Men, you can have some mutants. Some mutants can shapeshift, but they can't control the weather. The ones that control the weather, they can't fly. The ones that can fly, they can't control the elements.
Yeah.
So it's like you got different powers. So you may be a shape-shifting creature, but that doesn't mean that you could defy gravity. So you need the shapeshift and you need wings.
Yes.
Amen.
But I'm just saying, just consider. No. But let these guys cook. Let them cook.
Yeah, because
this is ridiculous.
The part I wanted to get to is the part that's coming up right here.
Quickly. No, let's get to it.
All right.
Verses 5 through 24 is going to talk about those creatures. Those creatures corresponded with what? Cherubim. So what were cherubim able to do? They had multiple faces because they were shapeshifters.
Yeah.
That's why in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, it says that.
Like Brady, you know where he's getting that? Please tell me, where is he getting this?
Let him cook. He's about to rock you. Hold on.
Because they were shapeshifters.
Yeah.
That's why in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, it says that even Satan is able to present himself as an angel of light. In other words, he can shapeshift.
Hold on, man.
And
I gotta play that again. Look,
to present himself as an angel of light. In other words, he can shapeshift.
And where do we see that?
Genesis chapter 3.
Come on, man.
Where he didn't inhabit a snake. He was a cherubim that they were used to seeing because the first temple on the planet was Eden.
Bishop.
No, hold on, pause for a second. I think he just noticed because if I'm not mistaken, the seraphim are the ones that the word in Hebrew is related to snake. The cherubim, the word isn't related to snake, but you see how he swapped it out there?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see that?
Yeah, but I don't know about the relation of seraphim to snake, so that's interesting.
Oh yeah. The word in Hebrew, if I'm not mistaken, has some relation to snake or fiery snakes or something like that. I'll look it up.
Well, he just said Satan was a seraphim. Yeah. Well, my comment is this here. If that is the case, that in Genesis 3, this is why I want Christians, if you ever watch this or listen to this, think about the stuff
pause real quick. I got the word.
Mm-hmm.
I got it. I'm sorry. So the word seraph in Hebrew is a Hebrew word that means burning or snake. So, but notice he says, so this is the big, I'm sorry.
No, let's go back and watch him do what you just said then. Because in light of that,
he just swapped it. Yeah.
Let's let him do it. That's a great point.
All right. Now
he was
we see that.
Genesis chapter 3.
Come on, man.
Where he didn't inhabit a snake. He was a cherubim that they were used to seeing.
So basically he just his mind just told him, no. You're talking about cherubim here. So you can't say he was a seraphim, even though that's someone that's related to snakes. You've got to swap that out for cherubim because that's what we're talking about here.
So there's no reason to superimpose or import cherubim who have no etymological connection to the snake in the garden. You see what I'm saying? Because if it was a seraph, it would have been an etymological connection. He could have said,
well, it doesn't need to be etymological anymore because if he's a shapeshifter, you don't need the connection etymologically.
Yeah, but Brady, if you want to go there, I think you can't because he reveals his subconscious connection that he's making. Mm-hmm. The words even sounded like cherubim, seraphim. And he made the connection. That's why he gets them there. But then he swaps out seraph for cherub. I'm just saying, anybody who's listening to this, who knows the Hebrew and stuff and who knows how this works, knows that he has no business putting a cherub there.
Well, he needs to make his shape-shifting thing work. But here's why it doesn't work still. even if he's correct that Satan, who can present himself, comes as an angel of light, also
Mm-hmm.
shape-shifted in Genesis, this is what's
Mm-hmm.
dangerous for his position. Okay,
Yep.
no real snake in the Garden of Eden talked to Eve. She was used to
Mm-hmm.
seeing these cherubims shapeshift and used to talking to them and all that. He shapeshifted into a serpent. So then why in Genesis 3, when God is handing out judgments, why the fuck do you judge the snake? If the snake is really Satan
Mm.
who shapeshifted, why tell all serpents that from now on, you all are going to crawl on your bellies and eat dust, and I'm going to put enmity between your seed and the woman's seed. You're going to bruise his heel, he's going to crush your head. Why?
Mm.
You got a million generations of snakes all throughout the world crawling on their belly because a cherub shapeshifted into one of them.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
what the hell?
imputed sin, right? Yeah, it's imputation. That's the doctrine of imputation,
The
bro.
imputation of
That's the
Satan's
doctrine.
shapeshifting.
Yeah, yeah, it's insane. There are. We don't worry about it making it so long as we can shoehorn a Satan into the Garden of Eden. It doesn't matter how we can tease this stuff out after the fact.
I'm done.
I guess we can
Yeah.
say the answer. We can say the answer to our finding Satan title here is we still haven't found him.
Yeah. Well, no, well, you
He's
have
got
in this
this.
sense. You have in this sense. Satan is everywhere you want him to be. There was a passage I was going to
Mhm.
read. The NET Bible has a great footnote in Isaiah chapter 14 that Mace, even though he talked about the NET, he did not read this footnote about who this figure really is being compared to. There's some mythological elements in Isaiah 14. And some Canaanite gods that the ruler is being compared to. Mace didn't talk about any of that, but we don't have time to go into it now. But
Let me. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. What are you saying?
I was going to say, if anybody's interested in what's really going on in Isaiah 14, read the chapter and read it in the NET and look at the footnotes in the NET about what the critical scholarship says about who's really being alluded to. There's no Satan being alluded to. There's other mythological and Canaanite deities being alluded to. The mountain of Zaphon is a Canaanite mountain where they would go to worship El, and that's all being talked about in Isaiah 14. So anyway, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, let him play maybe 2 or 3 minutes more of him just I don't know, talking this stuff, and then we could just close out with that. It's fine. I just want people to hear it a little,
Okay.
because it just gets more ridiculous after that.
Okay. Is it sharing? No, hold on.
Because the first temple on the planet was Eden.
Bishop, all right. Now, so I want to, I don't want people to look at this and feel like we are just jumping from place to place. I want to stress the importance of having a good grasp on the Word of God.
Yeah.
Because what you just did was
That's so
like you
subconscious.
didn't
It's so right. It's so right for him to say that.
look at one passage and say,
it's almost like he knows what's going on,
Yeah.
yeah, you didn't look at one passage and say, oh yeah, this is how we know it's not. No, you gave us supporting passages to prove why and how we know who Satan actually is.
Now this is gonna blow your mind.
What's going on, Brady? What's brother do you?
When I was in seminary, one of the things that made me say I can't do this shit no more was when I saw how easy it was to remix these passages to make it say whatever you wanted it to say. If you wanted to get a Satan out of this passage, you could just remix it here. Mute this verse, mute that verse. And when I say mute, here's how you mute the Bible. make these verses figurative and make this one over here that you want literal. Or what if I wanted to go a different way? Okay, well then make that one figurative and make these verses over here literal. You can do that ad infinitum, making this literal, that figurative, making this literal, that figurative. This is imagery. This is actually, you can do that any kind of way you want and come up with the presentation of Satan or the presentation of God or the presentation of angels or the presentation of what you think is redemption or the presentation of whatever it is. All you got to do is remix it. Make what you want figurative, make what you want literal. So for him to say, you just showed us what it looks like to have a good grasp on the Bible. In a way, yes. I was going to say, no, you didn't. But no, in a way, yes. Anybody who grabs it can do that. And they can do it very differently. And if you're studious enough, you can defend the way you remixed it. That's why Michael Heiser can present what he says and Pastor Mason says, I don't agree with everything. Why? Because Michael Heiser mixed certain things differently. He turned up the volume on passages that you want to turn down. He made them literal where you want to make them figurative. He remixed it differently than you. He's got a good grasp on the Bible, and so do you. You just mixed it differently.
Yep.
So go back to Ezekiel 28.
I'm here.
Verse 13.
Yeah.
First off, this can't be the king of Tyre. He said, you were in Eden.
Talk, man. I was going to put that out.
We already talked about that. You were in Eden, probably talking about a comparison. He's not saying you were literally there. He's comparing him to someone who was there. Yeah. And not Satan.
You were in Utopia.
Not Satan, but Adam. But like I said, Mace is going to take that literal. And so because he's going to take it literal, then it can't be the king of Tyre. It's got to be old Beelzebub.
It's highlighted in here.
It's right there.
It's there in the
garden
text.
of God. Was he inside a snake? It says, every kind of precious stone covered you.
Man.
Then it lays out those stones.
Was the serpent in Genesis covered in gemstones?
Well, no, he's saying it wasn't a snake. He's saying this is the shape-shifting cherub, basically. Yeah. Let him go.
Yeah.
So again, it's pointing to the fact that this was a supernatural being. And the reason why, it wasn't that the animals could talk back then and Adam and Eve knew that they could talk. It doesn't even make sense. And
that's why I said at the beginning that the point you were making was going to come back up.
The jokes write themselves.
Yeah, to say doesn't even make sense. But everything else we're saying does make sense. Like, the fuck out of here. I don't say that to be disrespectful to Mace. I'm just saying that idea, animals talking doesn't make sense. Amen. But everything else does.
The idea that in the middle of this discussion about griffins and cherubs and
shape-shifting,
shape-shifting, that the phrase that don't even make sense comes out of somebody's mouth is like a joke. It's like a joke that wrote itself. It's like, are you kidding me? Nothing. Okay, show me the part of this conversation that is making sense. Please show it to me.
Fall, they stop talking, and then when Jesus come back, they're going to be able to talk again. That's not what's happening here. It's basically they were used to seeing the heavenly beings around. That's why God even coming into the garden.
No part of Genesis tells you that they were used to seeing heavenly beings around. This is the special sauce.
Special sauce.
There
right?
you go.
Garden wasn't abnormal.
Talk, man.
Because before.
I'm sorry.
And you can look at even the Bible, Bible Project.
Yes.
So you got to understand the reason why, like, we're going back. Revelation. The reason why it's going to be a new heavens and a new earth because God always wanted there to be a cosmic overlap between heaven and earth. So in Genesis, heaven and earth was supposed to overlap in Genesis. Right, and that's what it was supposed to be like. All this, we were supposed to see spiritual beings and live among spiritual beings.
It was
supposed to be normal. Like on Avatar.
Like on Avatar.
I wasn't going to say this until you just made that. You brought that up. I loved Avatar the first time I saw it. I tried to watch
Yeah, yeah,
Avatar 2, and I could
yeah,
not
yeah.
watch it. You know why I couldn't watch it? Because in the first 30 seconds of the movie, it comes on, and it's the main character, the main male character, is him
Yeah.
narrating, talking about how he and the blue chick that he was in love with, how they ended up having a baby. Now, the writers and everybody know, but wait, he's not physically in that body. He's in this tank
Hmm.
and mentally controlling this body. How was he physically going to have a baby with, with this? If he's only using an avatar, how is he going to have a baby? And the narration in the first 30 seconds of the movie, I think it's the first 30 seconds, or the first minute of the movie, he says, "We don't know how, but somehow I was able to have a baby with this." This was right after I publicly deconverted. I said,
Yeah.
"There's no way I'm going to reject the Bible because of this. I don't know how this shit is true,
And
but
sit
I'm
through
just gonna take it as
this.
true."
Yeah,
And I can't
yeah.
suspend my disbelief if in the first 30 seconds you're going to tell me this entire movie is based off of, I don't know how, but I ended up having a baby through my avatar. I can't do this shit. You're like, so for them to
The
compare,
fact that
go ahead.
the fact that he's drawing direct, it's fun. It's so weird that they can't see themselves. He's drawing parallels to sci-fi fantasy. It's like Avatar. Yeah, yeah, bro. Yeah, it's like what? What are we talking about, bro? What are we talking about? We're talking about griffins. We're
Right.
talking about Sphinx. Like, what is going on? This is what we're talking about.
Well, we
This
were
is what we're
supposed.
talking
Well, see,
about.
here's
Come
the
on.
problem is, if maybe if the fall hadn't happened, we were supposed to be walking around and seeing these spiritual beings and whatever, and we would have been used to it. But here's the wild thing about that. Even if that was the case, God put a cherubim outside the garden to keep Adam and Eve from going back in and getting the fruit from the tree of life. Apparently, there was no problem with the spiritual beings being visible at that time. What prevents us from walking the
Yeah.
earth today and seeing the thing that you said we were supposed to be used to, the overlap of heaven and earth, and walking around and seeing spirit beings and all that? Why is it that whether it be angels or demons, I guess now, that the only time you see them is when you look at another human being and you demonize them?
Yeah,
What
yeah. There
prevents
you
the
go.
angels and demons from being visible?
Ugh, Brady. Okay, all right. I know we keep saying we're. Please give me 3 minutes. Just go to the end. Go to the end. Go to the end of the video.
All right.
Because he starts talking about provincial, like demons, essentially.
Yeah.
And it speaks to what you were just saying. I think if we just let him talk, he will tell all of his own jokes. Like, just go further down. I think it's let me see. I'll show you where it is. It's toward the end of his of the video.
I'm at the last 3 minutes right now.
No, that's too far down. You got to go back I don't know, go back like 15 minutes or something like that, 10 minutes.
Let's see what we got.
Need to
Yeah,
capture.
Absolutely.
Now the question is, like, you'll have guys like I will mention his name, Clinton E. Arnold, and others who will kind of say, when you go in to do ministry in a
this is the
particular place
conversation.
like in
So
North
go
Philly,
back about 5 minutes. Go back about 4 or 5 minutes.
Are we going to watch all the way up to
Go
here?
back 4. No, we're not. I just want you to hear him saying this one thing.
because I think that the practical idea of dealing with it, one of the things that I think the deliverance and spiritual warfare movement does, and I got to look up this, thank you, baby, this one resource by this guy, that's kind of like one of the.
For anybody who's like worried about what just happened, he probably was talking to his wife or.
Yeah. His wife is
fathers, because he'll have some good stuff to say. I gotta look at my orders, but they would say that there's no such thing as territorial spirits. They would say, I was like, that always confused me, because I would see the verse that we saw and Daniel 10 and
So real quick, he's saying that conservatives wouldn't get caught up in the talk about territorial spirits, and for good reason, because it sounds crazy. But anyway, he's saying he would always have a problem with that, right? So let him talk.
And Ezekiel, why would it call it a prince of a location and a king of a location, right? And then you look in Ephesians and it says rulers and principalities and powers in the heaven. That sounds like structure to me. And so so that when you go to I remember when I got to Atlanta, we got over Jackie and Preston house, and and Jackie with her crazy self talking about something. Did you see the principalities?
But the bad part is, we got off the plane and said, "Oh, Jesus."
So that part of the spiritual warfare, and the spiritual warfare deliverance movement, I do believe.
Man.
So basically, I don't know what they're talking about, but I'm going to assume.
No, let him play some more. Go ahead. What you say?
They flew into Atlanta. They flew into Atlanta and felt spookiness, mainly because of what they know about Atlanta and homosexuality there and all that. And they're saying that when they flew into Atlanta, they could sense the spiritual.
Yeah, let him talk.
Okay.
He's gonna feel
like
what
if
you're
you look
saying.
at Chicago and Philadelphia, the people are just angry.
City of brotherly love is the angriest.
It's just an anger over it. Atlanta is like sexual.
Oh my gosh.
I know people talk about alternative communities, but
it's hyper
sexual.
Hypersexual,
And so you go to certain cities. It's like you go to SoCal. It's just like bread, money, and Miami the same thing.
Yeah.
You go there, you see every luxury car you can see.
You can pause.
And so
so people who are getting money in Silicon Valley, they tend to congregate together to go get money together. But that we need to explain that with supernaturalism, right? Anyway, I just the idea that certain cities become a hub for certain things.
Are we done?
Let him play for just the 20 more seconds. And then
I was only asking because I was going to take it off the screen so we can stop sharing screen.
And not that having nice things is wrong, but I'm talking about an inordinate amount of something that lets you know that something's going on that's not just natural. There's a stronghold of this, an inordinate amount of something that
hold on.
You go there, you see every luxury car you can see. And so, and not that having nice things is wrong, but I'm talking about an inordinate amount of something that lets you know that something's going on that's not just natural.
Like what? Like he tried to rationalize. Like, I'm not saying that having nice things is wrong, but then you double down on the fact that these people have nice things in such an exorbitant amount. That's a key that there's a spiritual that demons are involved in this shit. Like the way that this colors your view. Like one of the things. Can I stop sharing, or you need him to say anything else?
You can stop. Yeah. And audience, be sure to like, subscribe. Part of the reason I guess Brady has hosted this here is he wants people to subscribe to my channel. For sure. He is the one who sent me out on this mission, Apostle J-Wit. So like, subscribe, share. But go ahead, finish off.
No, I'm just saying, like, one of the beauties of deconverting and no longer living my life chained to the worldview of people who lived thousands of years ago. I don't have to run to a book I don't have to hold the book up and look at the, culture in Atlanta to say, oh, that's why this is happening to demons. Oh, that's why it happened in California, demons. To not have to look through a book to see what's going on. And then call my obstructed vision real sight. Like, it's such a relief. It's such a freedom to not have to do this, to not have to sit here. Now, I mean, it's weird because I'm sitting here critiquing these guys, but they're sitting down. Only reason why I'm sitting down critiquing them is because they're sitting down critiquing the world that we have to live in. And rather than using the powers of reason and the powers of just sound deduction, they're putting on spectacles of people who couldn't see germs, couldn't see, galaxies in the sky, that thought the stars were actual beings, spirit beings, and you're using them to tell you what to make of life. Like to me, I'm sure they will look at me and the way I live and say,
Yeah.
even though the way you live is sad. But I'm like, no, you're chained to a book.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
Yep. And it just understand all of that high. I don't even know if we can call it highfalutin because it's just straight. They were sitting down having basically an hour-long discussion about straightforward mythological characters like griffins and seraphs and whatever. And where they took it, they said, okay, we got to make this real. We have to, where does the rubber meet the road? Okay, these griffins or whatever are now, they're now principalities that are over. And so when you go to a city and they're getting money and they're driving around in luxury vehicles, just know that that's attached to these mythological figures that you can go to Assyria and see, like, you can go to Syria and see sculptures of or whatever. This is crazy. So
to those on the deconversion train, go ahead.
No, that's it.
I was going to say to those on the deconstruction train, this is why we say, welcome to real life. You give up this nonsense.
Yeah.
You talk about existentialism. One of the things about existentialism is accepting life, accepting reality. Think about even Maslow's hierarchy, right? One of the top stages of Maslow's hierarchy is actualization. And part of actualization is accepting the facts. Rather than having to make up meta narratives, like what is life? Like what can we make of it? What do we know about it? What can we find out about it? Accept that and stop trying to stress it to be or fit some mythological narrative that it's like you're cosplaying your way through life. You don't have to do that.
Yep.
Yeah. That's my 2 cents.
No. Thanks so much for hosting Exit Strategy over here,
Yep.
Brady.
We'll be back next week with a great one. You wanna preview it or just?
Yeah, you go ahead. I've said enough. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're going to actually team up again next week back on Ichapod because there were 2 bookends to my deconversion. One was Peter Enns at the beginning of it. At the other end was William Lane Craig. And I wrote my book to make them have a conversation. And I pulled in all these other theologians to kind of help join this conversation. But my book was making them have a conversation. Well, just this week, Monday of this week, they actually did come together and have a face-to-face conversation. And J-Wit hit me up like, yo, you got to see this. And I watched it twice. We're going to actually be talking about the conversation between Peter Enns and William Lane Craig next week on Exit Strategy. So I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Yeah. Peace and love to all of the Ichapodians and those who are down with J-Wit in the mission. And we'll see you on the next one.
Peace.